Hey everyone, Cody Hayes here, and I'd like to welcome you to part two as we look at the book of Revelation. And where we left off was essentially with an introduction. So now let's look at some of the contents of the book of Revelation, where you have the communion of saints and the woman. Well, you have a scene of those in heaven taking the prayers of the faithful to the Lamb, up to the Lamb or Christ. And that's what my top image shows there, an image relating to the communion of saints, where essentially those in heaven, those that had once lived, the faithful, the saints, and now are in heaven, and then those that are part of the heavenly host, the angels, praying for the faithful on earth. What's known again as the communion of saints, that the saints in heaven pray with you and for you. And then you have the children of the woman versus the dragon or the devil. From chapter 12 of the book of Revelation, obviously we can guess who the dragon or the devil is. That's pretty easily mentioned. But who exactly is the woman that's referenced in the text? Well, you have some polyvalent interpretations. Polyvalent is essentially a word that means many, many meanings, many interpretations at once. But some of the individuals that have been referenced with a polyvalent interpretation, they can mean all of this at once, are Eve, the first woman in Genesis, the United Kingdom slash tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes, Mary, the Virgin Mary, Jesus' mother, and the Christian church. So polyvalent interpretations, essentially multiple meanings at once. Now look a little bit at the beast. Who exactly is the beast in the book of Revelation? Well, in many respects, it can depend on which number is used, 666 or 616. There are different manuscripts of the book of Revelation. Some have the number at 666, which is the one that most people are familiar with, but there are other manuscripts that have the number at 616. And I don't know if this was a copyist error at some point or what, whichever number had it right. I do believe Irenaeus, and I'm not sure if it's in his Against Heresies, but it's from one of his writings, Irenaeus, the early church father and bishop of Lyon, writing in the later part of the second century. He, of course, knew about the different numbers, but I believe he held that the 666 was the correct one. Well, in Hebrew, the name Nero Caesar is Gematria for 666. Now, gematria, you may be wondering what exactly is that? Well, the numbers that I have on the screen, like the 13, the 666, the 616, verse 18 there, those numbers come from the Arabs. So before we had the numerical system that we're used to, letters represented a number. Like in our Latin slash Roman alphabet, X is 10, L is 50, V is 5, C is 100, that type of thing. Well, in Greek, the name Caesar God is Gematria for 616. And Nero's name in Latin, it also adds up to 616. I believe, and I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think that Caligula, who was the first Roman emperor to declare himself to be a living god, I think his name in Greek, I think it may add up to 616. I'm not sure. Or not, or that it would add up, yeah, to 616. I'm not sure though if that is the case. Um, but I do believe he falls in there somewhere. Of course, the Caesar god, that could be a reference to any particular Roman emperor, as a lot of them did see themselves as living gods, certainly starting with Caligula. So chances are that the beast is either Nero Caesar or any one of the Roman emperors. So look a little bit at Babylon or Rome at its fall. During the time period of the New Testament, Babylon was a code word for the Roman Empire and its capital city. I, of course, mentioned this um, in the lecture over First Peter, but the Roman Empire was the empire that controlled Judea, controlled Israel, and Babylon would have its reference with the ancient Babylonian Empire that conquered the Jewish people back in the 6th century BCE or BC. So Babylon was used by Jews and Christians as a synonym for evil, and in this case, it was a reference to the Roman Empire and its capital city, Rome. John of Patmos, he refers to Babylon as a whore dressed in purple and scarlet who rides the beast, and he may have drawn from Roman coins as part of his imagery. Um, referring to Babylon as a woman, or in this case, the Roman Empire as a woman, referring to her as a whore, also could have some ties back to the Hebrew prophets. Isaiah referred to the city of Tyre as a prostitute, so could have some ties there. Dressed, though, in purple and scarlet, that refers to the colors of royalty. Riding the beast would, of course, be a reference to the emperor, whichever one it was. But he may have also drawn a little bit from Roman coins, like the image that I have here, which that coin would have been minted around the time period, um, would have been after Nero's reign, close around Nero's reign, certainly with the reign of the Emperor Vespasian. But in the time period that the Book of Revelation would have been written, that many argue for, or certainly would have been known more than likely by John of Patmos. But you have there a woman representing Rome sitting on the seven hills, which of course refers to the seven hills of Rome. But Babylon will fall, Rome will fall, and Christians must not take part in its sins. So the Roman Empire will fall, Babylon will fall, and Christians must not take part in its sins. Arguably, the biggest sin would have been the worship of the emperor, treating the emperor as a god. And Jesus will soon return. I'm going to read from this passage here from the book of Revelation. See, I am coming soon. My reward is with me to repay according to everyone's work. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who wash their robes, so that they will have the right to the tree of life, and one may enter the city by the gates. Outside are the dogs and sorcerers, and fornicators and murderers, and idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. It is I, Jesus, who sent my angel to you with this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright and morning star. Well, that was certainly a very good comfort um, for Christians who are being subjected to persecution, knowing that Jesus, will come soon. And of course, the image I have here on the bottom essentially shows the triumph of Christianity over paganism. And I can't tell, I'm looking down there, the images of the various Greco Roman gods. The only one I can tell for certain there is Zeus with a lightning bolt in his hand, or in the Roman form, Jupiter. But Zeus slash Jupiter, who was the king of the Greco Roman gods. But essentially, the image shows, Christ, you know, Jesus and his angels triumphing over the various, Greco-Roman gods. Well, I think that we will stop here, but when we come back, we'll finish up just a little bit left of the book of Revelation. We don't have much left. So take care. I will symbolically see you then.